In this video, I would like to explain how you derive the quadratic formula using the method of completing the square. So we start with the standard form of a quadratic equation, which is ax squared plus bx plus c equals to 0. We complete the square and we end up with this, which is the quadratic formula. I'm going to outline 7 important steps that you should check. So buckle up as we start. Step number 1. Step 1. In step 1, we have ax squared plus bx plus c equals to 0. This is our standard form of the quadratic equation. And from here, we want to get rid of this a. We want to remove the a so that the coefficient of x squared becomes 1. This is a very important step. Every time you're completing the square, make sure you remove the coefficient of x squared. If it's -2, if it's a 2 or any other number, remove it and make sure it's a positive 1. You do that by dividing throughout. So in step 1, we simply dividing by a. So divide by a throughout. If we divide by a throughout, we get x squared plus b over ax plus c over a being equals to 0. We are done with step number 1. Our coefficient of x squared is now a positive 1. We are ready to move on to step number 2. So step 2. In step 2, let me rewrite what we had before. We have x squared plus b over ax plus c over a being equals to 0. In step 2, we are isolating this constant. We are taking this to the right-hand side. That's what we're simply doing in step number 2. Please take note of the sign here that when we move to the right-hand side, the sign is going to change from being positive to negative. So let's do that. We have x squared plus b over ax being equals to minus c over a. That's step number 2. And step number 2 is done. We have isolated our constant. We took it from the left-hand side to the right-hand side, and the sign changed from being positive to negative. We are ready for step number 3. Step number 3 is completing the square. Step 3. Here we are now completing a square. So let me rewrite what we have from the previous step. We have x squared plus b over ax equals to minus c over a. To complete the square, we add the square of half the coefficient of x. So we look at this number here. Find half of it, square it, and add both sides. If it was a numeral, an ordinary number, we were going to divide that by 2, and we square. We add both sides of our equation. So in this case, it's b over a. If we divide b over a by 2, we get b over 2a. That's what the square of that is, what we're adding both sides of our equation. So let me do that. I have x squared plus b over a x plus, this is what I'm adding. I'm adding b over 2a squared. This is equals to minus c over a plus b over 2a squared. I'm adding b over 2a squared both sides of my equation. And if I do that, what I have here, this part here, is my complete square. And once I have a complete square, I am ready to move to the step number 4, which is the following step. In this step, we are simply taking these terms or these elements that are being squared, we're putting them in one bracket and squaring them. So we're taking an x, this x here being squared, and this b over 2a that is being squared. We take them, we put in one bracket, and we square that bracket. On the right hand side, we do some algebra and simplify what we have. If they were numbers, ordinary numbers, we're going to just punch in our calculator and get the value of that. But in this case, we're simply going to do some simple algebra and we evaluate the right hand side. So let's move on to step number 4. So step 4, I'm taking x, which was being squared, plus b over 2a that was also being squared. I square this. Okay. To my right hand side, I have minus c over a plus b squared over 4a squared. Now I have to deal with the right hand side. I want to simplify it. I can simplify this side using a common denominator. So we can have a common denominator here. We're still on step number 4. We haven't moved to the next step. We simply want to simplify this side. So please allow me to rewrite this and highlight how you do it. Okay, so we have already x plus b over 2a squared being equals to, I'm going to rewrite it as b squared over 4a squared minus c over a, and I put all this under a common denominator of 4a squared. 4a squared into 4a squared, I get 1 times the b squared, which gives me b squared, minus a into 4a squared, I get 4a times the c, that's 4ac. So in essence, this is now one term under one denominator, common denominator. On my left hand side, I still have x plus b over 2a squared. So this is step number 4. If you're done with step number 4, you should have this, what I'm having here. Now I'm ready to go to step number 5. In step 5, I am removing this squared. I'm removing the 2 there, that's squaring x plus b over 2a. I can remove the square by taking the square root both sides. So that's step number 5. Let's go there. Step 5. If I take the square root on the left hand side, I get x plus b over 2a being equals to the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 4a squared. Please note that every time you take a square root, it's either positive or negative. Don't forget the plus or minus. Now, still in step 5, we can see here that our denominator is a perfect square. Our denominator here is a perfect square, but the numerator is not a perfect square. We can simply evaluate the denominator or simplify the denominator, but we keep the square root sign on the numerator. We are allowed to do that. In that case, we can rewrite this as plus or minus the root of b squared minus 4ac, all this over 2a. 2a being the square root of 4a squared. So we're done with step number 5. So x plus b over 2a. This is step number 5. We're ready to move to step number 6. In step 6, we are isolating our x. We want to be left with x on the left hand side and everything else on the right hand side. We're going to achieve that by moving the b over 2a to the right hand side. So all this is going to move to the right hand side. And as we do that, we take cognizance of the sign, that as we shift from the left hand side to the right hand side, there should be a change of sign. It was positive, it's going to be negative. With that in mind, let's move to step number 6. Step 6. On the left hand side, we'll be left for x. The right hand side becomes minus b over 2a plus or minus the root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. We're done with step number 6. If we look here, we have essentially solved for our x because our x is now isolated on the left hand side. We have solved this. This is step number 6 and it's complete. Now in step number 7, I am simply rewriting this, the right hand side, under one common denominator. We have 2a here and 2a there. We have 2a here and 2a here, which means we can simply add or subtract the numerators and put them under one denominator, which is 2a. This is step number 7 and our last step. Step 7. We still have our x. Now we have minus b plus or minus the root of b squared minus 4ac, all this over 2a. This is the quadratic formula. This is the quadratic formula, and we have derived the quadratic formula using the method of completing the square. Please, if you have any part that you're not understanding, any part that is confusing you, just let me know in the comments below. And guys, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I shall be posting more videos. If you have any questions, just email me, then I'll solve the questions and post on YouTube for everyone to see. Otherwise, thank you.